All right. So why we're not looking short off this open is the first thing, looking at overnight price data, right? How has price been trading overnight? We knew we had CPI in the morning. Fine. We knew that we're probably going to be slower and accumulate going into the AM session, which as you can see, we had CPI come in at 8:30. Now, this did not break the overnight range is the first thing. As you can see here, what we're doing is just in a broadening formation. Now, looking at higher time frame structure, yesterday we sold off aggressively. We put in higher time frame gaps, higher time frame PD arrays. Now, what I want you guys to understand is why we don't look short in this, right? Although it's a continuation lower, although we are bearish, right? Let's make that very clear. We are bearish. Why we're not looking short there is because there's no higher time frame PD array supporting this move down here, right? And as you can see, it's very clear in terms of price how it's moving. We're not rejecting, significantly and getting that move down. There's no manipulation going on. That's why what I want to see is pure manipulation happen in this 4-hour gap, and then we start to draw lower, which will also break us out of this broadening formation that we're in. We could probably shoot for another low a day, right? Whatever it might be. And I believe that, once we cross over this 5-minute gap, like I said, then we'll dart to this 4-hour gap pretty quickly, and then we'll get that manipulation move back. If we do continue to trade higher, right, through this 4-hour gap, right, and for whatever reason, price is showing significant strength, then we can look to play continuation into, those gap fills and higher, right? But for right now, we just have to sit on our hands and see what price has to offer. And right now, it's offering nothing. Understood? I want to swivel back to this morning's kind of commentary that I put in the live stream, kind of educating everybody on why we shouldn't be shorting down at those lows and why we were looking for a potential take once we tapped into that higher time frame PD array or saw price start to displace lower. Now, we did manage to try a jab short, and I will explain how this looked in real time. So what's going on here, right, is price, swept all these overnight lows. Like we talked about, overnight price wasn't so clean. We had a higher time frame PD array that wasn't supporting this move down originally, which is why we waited. Let me just delete this. Which is why we waited, right? We can see here, okay, yes, we have a 5-minute gap. Yes, we have continuation lower. A lot of people possibly took this short. Now, on the 5-minute zooming out, this is crazy, right? These wicks on both sides. We're sitting in the broadening formation, as I said before. Really not the move I was looking for. I wanted to see manipulation in price higher, right? And then to trade lower. Now, this is kind of what we got. Now, if we zoom out, here, which is also the 4-hour gap. Now, understanding lower time frame price moves, let me just go to, let's go here. Right, seeing price start to manipulate higher. It's not necessarily that we have to tap that gap and reject, right? Especially if we're weak in terms of, the assets that we're trading. They don't necessarily have to rebalance in that gap, right? They can rebalance just in general, right? They're sweeping a bunch of internal highs from the overnight range, right? And we're putting in a nice 5-minute gap here. Now, price decides to come here, right? And this is where we jab short was, if you guys could see here, right? We'll take on confirmation if we close on both, right? As you can see here, ES closing below, NQ closing below, and right, we'll go, break even there. And I will show you guys exactly where we're looking at. So took this short. You can see here, now at this point, my whole thesis was as long as we can hold this BPR area, right, this bullish gap, you can see that we create a bearish gap here. Same thing with ES. As long as we don't get a strong closure above both on both indices, I'm not worried about this short not playing out. Now, again, there's nothing wrong with what we did in this take. We even waited for manipulation. We didn't short down here, right? If I shorted down here and I shorted here, I would have been very mad at myself, right? Because I know that's not following any kind of plan or any kind of just structure in general that I should have been following. So me shorting up here on this inversion, I have nothing wrong with this take whatsoever, right? We managed to get our entry, I think, somewhere around here, right? Stops at the high, targeting, obviously, the low of day, and then we're targeting this low down here, which you can see when we zoom out, right? This nice low down here. So nothing wrong with this. I even talked about before, without hindsight, how I want to see price move up and then come back down. Now you can see, price eventually stops us out, right? And it taps in that 4 hour. Now, as you can see, this is what's important here. We're not really doing much in terms of price. We're stacking a bunch of LR to the downside. Now, I know this is possibly setting up for our second opportunity to look short. Now, right, seeing price still not really displacing, right? It kind of tries to invalidate this little OB here. It's not really significant. We didn't get a move off of that, right? Price trades higher again, right? And what do we start to do? Now, obviously, you guys might notice, we took the high on NQ, while we did not on ES. Now, this doesn't mean much to me just because of the fact that we didn't displace from this area just yet, right? I want to see displacement out of this range in order for me to, start to look short, which we start to trail lower. Let's go to the 1 minute. And this is what I was looking at to possibly take a second entry short, and it was this BPR area here, which I will show you guys as well. Right here, right? You can see this. We have this bearish gap, right? Put in bullish gap. If this invalidates, that's going to validate that original trade idea for me in terms of the higher time frame, especially since we, tapped in that 4 hour gap. So going back to ES here, right? We can see this area hold, right? Hold, and then eventually still doesn't get the closure below this gap, right? We come back up, we retrace in this gap, and then we get the closure. This is the short that I was looking at. Right, obviously stops the high because as we're structured invalidates, right? And we're targeting this internal low down here, right? And then obviously we're looking for this nice low down here as well. I'm not anticipating for us to run low a day, right? Obviously timing is one thing. We're still 1 hour left with the market to close. Also to understand that the weekly low is likely to be put in, right? I don't think we're going to go make a new weekly low at the end of the day on a Friday. So seeing this, right, obviously on the closure, you jab, right? Obviously price traded very slow, and then started to get your movement, right? You can see here we create a bearish gap, respect that, move lower, right? And we're starting to trend lower. And we are running all this low resistance liquidity. Now, the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway I want from this recap from you guys is understanding that the model that you're trading cannot be just a pattern. There has to be more to it. Now, yes, strong liquidity is everything, right? We had an initial bias of us trading lower, but in order for us to trade lower, we want to see, in order for us to engage, see price move higher, then look to engage and then trade it lower, right? We don't want to just, off the open, especially in these kind of conditions that we've been seeing overnight. CPI came out, right? This was good, right? But this is not enough manipulation to clear out, all these highs up in here. It wasn't enough manipulation for me to go short, right? Because you have to understand, again, positioning. It's Friday. It's the end of the week. We've been selling all week. Do you really think I'm going to short the bottom, but potentially the bottom of the weekly candle? No, right? I need to see a little more, and then we could look to short into low a day, and then so on, right? We would let our trade play out, trail stops, wherever it wants to ride to, it's going to ride. But this is why I, avoided this kind of short. And especially when you're trading something like this so early on, I always talk about this, waiting out a little bit. It is very easy to get frustrated in this, right? You see this, it comes back up. Maybe you start to panic. You see these candles start coming out of nowhere. And keep in mind, guys, we're talking about 100-point swings here. We're not talking about, 10 points on NQ. These candles are moving in terms of points, right? We get this move up. Once we saw this manipulation and seeing this displacement come through, I had no problem to start to look short here. And that's why I have nothing wrong with that take that we took. I think, we followed the plan. We even waited, because this was announced as well. Let me find it. This is when that thesis started playing out, right? Thesis started playing out, waiting for a turn. Either we turn here with ES data high, right, when that was swept, or we reach for NQ 4 hour. I also recorded thesis I was talking about before. Almost into the 4 hour gap, right, stayed the plan. Once I saw price start to reject this area without tapping this, that's why, I took the short there. But that pretty much wraps it up in terms of the recap. I think it was just a very, very dull week, I guess. It really didn't offer much in terms of entries and whatnot. It's just one of those weeks that we have to kind of survive and move on. There's really not much you can do. Keep following your system, keep following your plan, manage your risk. This is the time that your discipline is going to be exercised, your patience, your risk management. your ability to call it and take the hit when price is not offering too much, right? That's when this stuff is tested. When the market comes back in about, a week, it could be start Monday, right? We start to pick up in terms of, clean price movements on the higher time frame. It's going to be a different story, right? That's when the money is easy to make. Right now, it's just about survival mode, and that's the way you got to position your mind. Think about protecting your risk rather than trying to squeeze out the maximum amounts you can from the markets, right? So that'll pretty much wrap it up, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.